We start in Lebanon, where at least 8 people are reported to have been killed in an Israeli attack on the southern city of Tyre. The Israeli military is urging the entire city to evacuate, prompting fears of a wider offensive against the Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah. Israel and Lebanon fired missiles at each other on Sunday, but then agreed on Monday to suspend attacks. The latest escalation has thrown the ceasefire into doubt.
Smoke billows from residential buildings in Tyre, Lebanon's 5th largest city, following fresh Israeli airstrikes. Israel has repeatedly struck Tyre since the latest war erupted with Hezbollah. The Iran-backed group maintains significant support and influence in the city. Ahead of the latest attack, Israel called on residents in the city to evacuate, a warning taken seriously by many.
The order was issued half an hour ago. Most residents have evacuated. Some are still packing their belongings, while others have already left. The area is about 99% empty.
We have packed our belongings and are preparing to leave. In the past, we used to say we were not concerned by previous evacuation warnings, but this one has reached us now. What do we have to do with this? What can we do now?
Others remained determined to stay.
I don't want to leave. I want to stay in Tyre. It's where my soul is. I'm a fisherman. Where can I possibly go and work?
DW correspondent Mohammed Schreiter had planned on visiting Tyre before Israel's proposed attack made the journey impossible.
I'm in Saida, the gateway to southern Lebanon. I was on my way to the city of Tyre, now an active war zone as clashes between Hezbollah and Israel continue to escalate. Our trip got cancelled after Israeli evacuation orders were issued for the entire city of Tyre, including the Christian quarter that has so far escaped the bombardment.
More than 1 million people have been displaced by Israel's renewed war on Lebanon, with sweeping evacuation orders forcing people to flee their homes, often with very short notice or no notice at all, sparking a refugee and humanitarian crisis. The latest attacks between both Israel and Iran deal yet another blow to already straining ceasefire negotiations, with seemingly no real end in sight to the conflict.
Makram Rabah is an assistant professor of history at the American University of Beirut. Welcome to DW. This time yesterday, Israel and Iran bowed to American pressure and agreed to stop the attacks, though they reserved the right to start again if the other side started. All sides were clear that Iran was talking about attacks on itself and on Lebanon. So what's your understanding of why Israel launched this latest attack on southern Lebanon?
Well, southern Lebanon has always been an active war zone. What we saw the last couple of days was a breach of the rules of engagement in the sense that the Israeli military targeted Hezbollah in the southern suburbs of Beirut. This was an area largely believed to have been under the patronage and the ceasefire announced by Donald Trump. This is what got the issue somewhat hot and going back to an exchange of gunfire between Iran and Israel. We're no longer talking about proxies here. The problem is that ultimately what is happening right now is that the Israelis are signaling that they're not only interested in creating a buffer zone, but rather they will drive all the way to the capital, Beirut. This is something which they have been implicitly talking about, and I think the Israeli military has gotten to this realization that the only way to destroy Hezbollah is to go after its head. And its head is not its fighters in the south of Lebanon, but rather what remains of the leadership, which is somewhat hidden and using the civilian population of Beirut as human shields.
So what then is your understanding of the Israeli plan for southern Lebanon? As you say, to keep bombing until they get to Beirut, or to keep bombing until they're happy that all the Hezbollah leadership is dead?
Well, certainly the main reason for the Israeli incursion into Lebanon and ultimately an invasion of Beirut would be to destroy the military infrastructure of Hezbollah, which has been proven to be more difficult than planned. I believe that while we are looking or repeating the word buffer zone, Israel wants to establish a no man's land, because the way they're going about it systematically, and what we're seeing right now with the evacuation of the city of Tyre, is an indicator not only of the upcoming destruction, but rather that there will be no return whatsoever until Hezbollah officially surrenders its weapons to the Lebanese government. The Lebanese government and the Israeli government have been having active talks in Washington. However, we don't feel that Hezbollah, who are part of the Lebanese cabinet, are actually implementing any of these. And the Israelis are going about it initially as a military solution, which I don't think they can achieve without loss of life and an extended period of engagement.
What response do you expect from Iran?
Well, Iran simply is trying to say right now, and the timing is very important, that if you hit the southern suburbs of Beirut, you are technically hitting Iranian soil. And the reason, it's not because they care about the Lebanese or even their Lebanese proxy, Hezbollah, but rather they are trying to win back the so-called Lebanese card for negotiations. And rather than allowing the Lebanese to do it on their own directly with Israel, they would like Lebanon to be on the table in Islamabad if this negotiation ever reaches anywhere. So they're trying to convince Donald Trump that the only way for the Iranian deal to take place with the US is for Lebanon to be also on the table. And this is something also very hard for the Iranians to achieve. They are betting on time, but I don't think that time is on the side of Iran and what remains of its leadership.
I do want to speak about those negotiations in Islamabad, but just to go back to my last question, do you expect an Iranian response to this Israeli attack?
Well, I don't think they will continue, because simply they have sent their message. They have, in a way, put the civilian population of Tel Aviv all in shelters. I'm talking about the last 2 days. And I think it's a limited exchange of, it's a limited fist fight in a way. I don't think that anyone could change much. And I don't think the Israelis at this particular moment in time would like to launch operations deeper into the heart of Iran.
And so negotiations in Islamabad, you say that Iran wants to see Lebanon at the table. What sensibly can be achieved if Israel isn't at the table, and if Israel continues to bomb, well, whoever it likes, regardless of what is agreed in Islamabad?
Well, certainly I don't have any control over Israel, but in the case of Lebanon and Hezbollah, I don't know how Hezbollah are expecting that Trump and the Israelis will allow them to go back to before the October 7 events. They are trying to say that if you give us back Lebanon and if you ultimately withdraw from Lebanon, we will ensure that no fire will go into Israel. This is unbelievably naive in a way, but at the same time, it shows that the current Iranian leadership are not understanding the regional dynamics. And also, we don't understand that regardless if Netanyahu is in power after the Israeli elections, any prime minister will continue what Netanyahu and the Israeli army has done, because simply it was Iran and Hezbollah who entered this war. The recent attack by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard on Israel justified, in a way, what the Israelis are doing. And in a way, one has to understand that, yes, Trump will continue to bully Netanyahu, but we have a record that the Israelis don't really care what the Americans think when it comes to their national security and their national interests.
Thank you, Makram Rabah from the American University of Beirut.
Thank you.
Iran is threatening to resume attacks on Israel if it does not halt its campaign against Hezbollah in Lebanon. With that in mind, I asked Mairav, Zonszein, senior analyst at the International Crisis Group, if Israel should be bracing for more incoming missiles.
Well, since we saw the ceasefire between Iran and Israel go into effect after about 24 hours, Iran tried to change the equation. They did fire on Israel after Israel fired only in Lebanon. And they have threatened to fire into Israel if Israel continues firing into South Lebanon. And Israel has been firing incessantly on South Lebanon, specifically in Tyre this morning, and evacuation orders, very big military operations. And right now I'm in Tel Aviv, and there are no rocket sirens, missile sirens from Iran. So currently Iran is not making good on that threat. But we don't know if it might decide to do so in the future or if it's still going to keep the equation to Beirut. Things are very, very fluid right now, so I don't know what's going to happen in the coming days and weeks.
Let's back up a little bit to the ceasefire that was agreed in April. Israel and Iran have different views about whether that ceasefire extends to Lebanon. Was that ambiguity there from the beginning?
I mean, I think for Iran and for Hezbollah, the ambiguity is not there. They're cooperating, they're working together, they're allies, they're part of an axis. And Iran made very clear from the get-go that Lebanon has to be included. Now, Israel obviously wants to separate the two fronts, and it has been fighting Hezbollah not just in the last few years, but in the last few decades. So this is not new. Israel occupies South Lebanon, and it has its own security issues there. Northern Israelis are not able to go about their daily life routine. It's been a very harrowing situation for them. But what Israel has done in Lebanon has displaced 1 million people and hasn't actually disarmed Hezbollah. So Israel wants to keep it separate. And Trump, I think, is the one who has been ambiguous about it, right? He's on the one hand said that, yes, Lebanon, Israel won't shoot on Lebanon. He's said many things about Israel not firing on Beirut, and then Israel did fire on Beirut. So I think Trump is the one who's either incoherent or going back and forth or just isn't sure what he wants to do. And so that has been the ambiguity. But I will say that if Trump wants to get some kind of deal, an extended ceasefire with Iran, he's going to have to rein in Israel on the Lebanon issue. And I think even Israelis, security officials and the public, I think, are starting to understand that no amount of constant fire, occupation of South Lebanon is going to actually make Hezbollah stop firing drones, is actually going to provide security. At some point, you are going to need to enter a real diplomatic process.
The U.S. and Israel started the war against Iran together on February 28, knowing full well that Iran-backed militias like Hezbollah might get involved. To what degree are the U.S. and Israel still in this together?
I mean, Israel and the U.S. have, together in an unprecedented war launched on Iran, worked together, Air Force together. There are tankers with fuel in the American Air Force that are sitting in Ben Gurion Airport here in Israel. So the amount of collaboration and the way that they've worked together, their armies, is seamless, really. Whether Trump and Netanyahu have certain friction on certain issues, I mean, I think it's clear that Trump wants to end this war. He's worried about the global economy. He's worried about the Strait of Hormuz. And Netanyahu has very different concerns. His concern is his domestic political survival and the nuclear issue and the fact that he promised a lot of things in this war that he wasn't able to deliver on. So there are divergences, but ultimately, I think we should pay attention only to what Trump is doing and what Israel's doing and not what they're saying, because those are two very different things.
How far do you think Israel is willing to go in pursuing Hezbollah in Lebanon? We saw what happened with the campaign against Hamas in Gaza. Lebanon, of course, is not Gaza, but do you see parallels there?
I mean, yes, Israel has since October 7th taken a very clear security doctrine of taking territory, sitting in that territory, occupying that territory, and firing even when there is a supposed ceasefire, whether in Gaza or in Lebanon. It also has taken territory in Syria beyond occupied Golan Heights. So yes, there is a pattern. I think in the case of Lebanon, you actually have a government who is interested in diplomacy, who is interested in strengthening itself and weakening Hezbollah. And it's very hard to understand why Israel won't go an extra mile with that. But Israel is also constrained now by Trump. And I think short of occupying the entire Lebanese country, which nobody is going to want to do in Israel and is not realistic, I don't see how Israel is militarily going to solve the issue of Hezbollah. But Israel currently holds a chunk of the territory, and it's very hard to see how it's going to withdraw from that territory or how the two sides are going to cease their fire without a very clear sustained political engagement by the U.S. and other countries in a mechanism to enforce that ceasefire, and also for an Iran and U.S. to enter a deal that includes Lebanon. Without that happening, I don't see the current escalation really changing.
You mentioned domestic political considerations in Israel also being a factor here. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu faces elections later this year. Do you see that playing a role in what's happening now on the ground?
I mean, there's nothing that Netanyahu does that isn't, related to his domestic political survival and his popularity. But it should, and he doesn't look very good right now. He has failed to deliver, as I said, in Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon. The Iran war, I think, is a strategic failure of epic proportions. So he's obviously very, very concerned. Is he firing in Beirut in order to defy Trump, in order to make it look like he's the only Israeli leader who can stand up to a U.S. American president? I don't think that's the only calculation. Maybe that's part of it. There's certainly a game here, and he's certainly being criticized by his opponents in politics here about being kind of a protectorate or a satellite state of the U.S. and not being able to make his own decisions. But I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. And I think, ultimately, Netanyahu's decisions are not just about, making himself look good. There's also an entire security establishment who does believe as well in the things that they are doing. It's not just him.
Mairav, thanks for your analysis. That was Mairav Zonszein, senior analyst with the International Crisis Group.
Thank you.